moved here. You live in Burnaby? Oh, I was there 2 years ago. And talk about Coquitlam. That was all bush country. And there were people, Surrey, woo, it's close to the American border. Every time we needed something, had to go to JCC in Vancouver. It was a distance to go. I would say that's one of the reasons for Burquest. My wife and it was somebody in one of the other couples says, well, maybe we should try something out here. And I can still remember helping them, in fact, in the phoning, going through the Jewish phone book. Oh, here's somebody, yeah, give them a call. And a few said, so we said, yeah, we're going to have a gathering or meeting. You want to come and join us? Well, I think roughly around 10, 12 couples showed up that first session. And it was kind of a collection of people that got together and said, we need something like that for this part of the Lower Mainland. At that point in time, there were very few Jewish people in Burnaby. It was considered the outskirts of Vancouver. In fact, many people in Vancouver didn't know that there was anything that existed east of Boundary. Anyhow, somewhere along the line, we connected with a few other Jewish couples, and it was in fall of 1974. We all went for dinner, and in the course of discussion, we all commiserated about the fact that for anything, we had to take our children into Vancouver to the Jewish Community Center. It was a long drive, and why don't we have something like that here in Burnaby? One of these synagogues, as a charitable endeavor, used to publish a Jewish phone book. So we went through the phone book. We found all the names of people in Burnaby, and my wife and the other ladies started phoning around. Yeah, we're interested. Well, let's have a meeting. And we did, and we in one of the houses. They happened to have a large living room, so probably around 15, 16 people. And they said, well, let's form a community association. What to do? So we had another gathering a few weeks later, and we invited somebody from the Richmond Jewish Community Organization, and they brought along their constitution. We said, we'll use this as our model. We had, by this point in time, around 10 couples. Now, it happened that one of them was a lawyer, and he was the one that ushered it through Victoria, and we had a constitution. And that's where it grew. So, and I would say that the main impetus, the energy, was my late wife, Tanis. And she somehow coerced me in being wasn't quite the president, the chairman. Because at that time, she says, well, you're the closest thing to a bureaucrat that we have. So we started a few endeavors. I know we had picnics, and we had dinners, and we formed a school.
Well, one day I was coming home from work on bus number 14. It was an express bus from downtown Vancouver to Kootenay Loop. and I was a subscriber to the Jerusalem Post, and I was having the newspaper there, reading away, and there was a gentleman beside me, leaned over and asked me whether I was a member of the tribe. And I confirmed that yes, I was, and Max and I have been friends ever since. He introduced me to Burquest. I took an interest in it, even though I was already a long-standing member of Temple Shalom. But I thought that we needed some support on the east side. I have an inability to say no to anything. Some years later, somebody tagged me to see if I would take over the presidency, which I did. We had a lot of members in those days, and a lot of functions also. I remember one specific Seder at a motel on Lougheed Highway in Coquitlam, at which, if I remember right, we had about 120 people. Some prominent people involved. Rabbi Bregman came out. Arthur Gutman held a service for us. I already knew Gary Averbach, and later on made donations to the organization. The pushing of Bob and Lisa Devlin. I arranged the mortgage because my son-in-law at that time was the mortgage man at Westminster Credit, and I got a pretty good deal with his assistance. It was great while it lasted, and I enjoyed it.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I figured it's a little bit too far to schlep across the bridge, and somehow we found Burquest. No idea, no recollection how we found out, but we joined them, and it was a very small group that met on Friday evenings in the basement of one of the founding members. One of the fun events was when Rudy and I planned a garage sale, which was set to take place at the end of August 2015. We planned and really gathered stuff from everybody, assembled the stuff, and then lo and behold, the evening before that, there was a huge storm in Vancouver, which everybody recalls, and in the end effect, we were here, but maybe a total of 5.5 people showed up for the garage sale, and it was not a huge success, but we had good chuckles about that. Lots of fun, good talk, good food, laughters. So we always felt we belong somewhere, and that's really the essence.
The first contact I remember having with Burquest was seeing an ad in the local paper about the community and looking for some Hanukkah candles about a year after we moved to British Columbia. And we came to a Hanukkah party, talked a bit with Cliff and Sandra Unger at the party, and it was a party, it was full of kids, it was fun. It was exciting, and then we joined Burquest in 94, 95. The first thing that I did for Burquest was take over editing a newsletter from Cliff Unger, the High Times newsletter. which was put out monthly, and it made me sort of an honorary board member, and I started going to board meetings, and within a year or two, Mark had decided that I should take on the responsibility of president, which I was really not ready to do at the time. But Mark was very involved with planning for the construction of the building, and he wanted to get a lot of things off of his plate. So they had raised a lot of money in 95 or 96 with support from Morris Wask and the Diamond Foundation and the Jewish community in Vancouver, the establishment Jewish community, as it were. And although in the end we didn't build the building that they had designed, he and Dan Robinson and others had gotten professionally designed by Lutzke, and the landscape garden, which had been designed by Cornelia Oberlander. Although that project did not come to fruition in the end, the money that was raised in that campaign was responsible for the building and property that we have today. It flowed through into the purchase of this building.
I got involved with Burquest because my wife found the place for our family, and she was on the board before I got involved. At that time, they had bought property out in the Tri-City area. They had had a fundraiser years before that where they bought some property. They were going to develop a new shul out there. They bought 4 lots, building lots, and anyways they had. And they had money that they had raised from their first fundraising through the Wask family, and it was about $500,000 when they bought this property. So they had it out there, and that's where they wanted to build it. But what happened, I got involved in that particular time. I know a little bit about building and that, and it wasn't suitable because Port Coquitlam was never going to give them the zoning to have a religious building out there, period. Didn't matter that it was Jewish or anything, because they don't make money off of religious sites, so they didn't want to have another religious site there. So anyways, a member here named Phil Hochstein and myself, Phil knew people with the provincial government, the social housing and everything like this. And make a long story short, we sold the property to them. So we got the money back, and then I hired a realtor to find us some property. And that's how this building came about. And actually it was interesting because it was owned by the Jehovah's Witness and it was very plain. This just went all the way through to the back. There was no kitchens, no nothing. But it was about the right size, and they had an completely unfinished basement. So they weren't anxious to sell at that particular time, but they wanted it. And so what I did is I made a deal with them. I said, we'll buy the building off you right now. We'll own it, and you can stay here as long as you want. And the reason we did that is they were in the process of building another building, which would be in a year's time. So we owned the building before they even moved out, but we gave them the grace till they finished building their new church, and then they moved in, and then we took over the building. I hired my old contractor to do the renovations. Risa worked with him. She laid it out where the kitchen was going to be with this, and of course my wife likes to do kitchens. That's her background. So we converted the whole thing up here and built what you see now. So you've got the classrooms were put downstairs. We had to put in a new door downstairs outside for things like this, and we had to, of course, build the classrooms right from scratch. There was nothing. There was nothing downstairs. So we did all that, getting everything, and Risa was telling me what to do. So, which is normal, So that's how that all came about. And then we had the official opening, and it was interesting. We've met a lot of good people here. I mean, one of our best friends, my buddy at the back there, when him and his wife came in here, they were shul shopping. And we got to know them and everything annexes, and him and I became the best of friends, and we still are today. So, which is nice. So you pick up relationships and everything like that.
In 1996, Glenn and I moved to New Westminster, and we were looking for some Jewish connections, and we read about Burquest, and so there was an event being held for potential members, and we showed up. We were struck right away by the warmth of the people and their interest, and we just felt this affinity right away that this was a group that we wanted to belong to. And then Rosh Hashanah happened, and this is when Burquest had Rabbi Yosef Wask, who provided high holiday services, and we found that it was one of the most meaningful high holiday services, and so we became more involved, and we took on various roles. I started with Adult Education Committee, and then I chaired the Ritual Committee, and I think we were very much part of the decision of Burquest to find a permanent space, and we were part of the group that found the space and were involved in the excitement of having our own building and having a wonderful place to have events and to interact with other people. I chaired the Adult Education Committee, and we did a number of different things. We brought some speakers in. We had a bit of a book club. We went to some theater. But I think one of the highlights of the adult education is we did a program on death and dying in a Jewish tradition, and we went to visit the cemetery, and we had a rabbi and the funeral director speak about Jewish practice, and we did a tour of the chapel and the cemetery, and so many people commented on how powerful that program was, and that some of the most emotional and connected experiences we had with Judaism were when we were at Burquest.
I found Burquest to be a very welcoming community from the very beginning. Everybody willing to help each other and support each other. One of my favorite memories was at a Sukkot when I took on the project of building a miniature sukkah for the school. We had a school of about 30 kids, and so I designed and built a little sukkah made out of pine wood rods, and also built it so the three side panels could be hinged together. The roof was a separate single panel that would be placed on top, and you placed the schach on that. It was a lot of fun for me to be able to build such a thing and have it inspected by the rabbi and it pronounced kosher, and away we went. So at least 15 years later, they were still using my little sukkah.
One of the interesting parts I thought of Burquest was the number of non-Jewish members who had come here with a partner or were looking for someone and were interested in becoming members and many of them becoming Jewish. And that really, in my opinion, set the tone I thought, for Burquest, because we needed to be, I felt, as others did, a rather liberal, open-minded organization that would accept people who wished to become members without tremendous amount of restrictions. And I believe that we carried that out. Relative to that development was the fact that the opinion was that we needed more religious perspective for Burquest. And that amounted to bringing in rabbis or cantors who were available to lead services for us, to make it more formal, which we did. And one of the interviews that we had was we met a cantor from Vancouver, Steve Levin, to lead services, etc., etc. All things told, it was well worth it.
And I believe 2005, right around Passover, either before or after, I was interviewed by a couple of board members here at Burquest, and also around the same time the White Rocks House, they're a Jewish community, and they both engaged me to be their spiritual leader and to lead Shabbat services and things. And it's been a wonderful association. Both communities very, very warm, nice people, a very good, warm community, and my associations here have been wonderful all the way through. I've really enjoyed it. We've had Shabbat services, we've had holiday celebrations. It's been a real pleasure serving the Burquest community here. They're a very warm community. The people are quite warm and Hamish, very, very, very nice, pleasure to deal with. I made a lot of friends here, and I feel very close to the community here. It's been a wonderful situation, I think, both ways for me. And I've gotten to get to know the community through life cycle events and teaching bar and bat mitzvahs and other events. I had an opportunity to do things differently than I had in the past, which was very nice as well. Part of what I do is trying to engage the congregation spiritually through the service with music, and the community has been very open about that, open-minded about the use of music during the services and at other events as well. And through that, I feel like I've been able to connect with people in the way that I want to. Memory that sticks in my mind is a bar mitzvah that I officiated at here. He was very ill that day and he was in hospital, and so the family is very concerned about that, and just have sent the services. And I suggested, well, if you have a laptop, why don't we just have somebody there with him, and we'll just stream it on the laptop somehow, and when he's ready to do his part of the service, we'll just do it virtually. And so he had his talit ready and his prayer book and the blessings for the Torah, and I called him up to the Torah with the use of the iPad. So in that way he was able to participate as he would have in person, and that really felt very special to me that we can accommodate that, and that our community was open-minded to doing things which would help enhance people's participation in the service.
We were coming from Richmond here. So it was a bit of a schlep, but we enjoyed it. We enjoyed the people we met. We had a lot of different activities going on eventually, thanks to Teresa. And I helped out with odds. If you needed someone to wipe dishes or clean up, I was right there. And then I was given a stack of papers like this with all prospective members. And every night I was on the phone, phoning people, and little by little I encouraged them to come out, that they'd enjoy it, that it's good for the kids, and especially new people that moved into Coquitlam. You got to know people by talking to them. And then I'd meet them at the door when they came for services or whatever social event, whatever we had. And I'd introduce them to people, and you know, they made friends here. And that was needed, I think, to have friends. And I feel that if you start with something that is social, it starts people meeting people, and that's the important part. So anybody, strangers coming in would feel they're finally part of something and not on their own. And that was very important to do.
Okay, Katz's and Winston's, what are you doing?
Vandalizing the building.
No.
Hanging the pictures on the wall.
Hanging the pictures on the wall.
Pictures on the wall.
They're not coming down.
This is the ritual of the hanging of the pictures.
Our children's artwork. There we go. All right.
Well, it's like any other organization. You start small, and little by little it grows. And eventually, people get to meet one another. They become good friends. You help out at bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs. You know, you're a community. And that's the important thing. You end up as a community. I really enjoyed a lot of what went on, and especially Risa's cooking. That was a big draw here.
What is Risa doing here in Doris's kitchen? You bet. So let's have that smile.
We're missing a few things, a few important things.
Well, I'm sure you'll take care of that.
And of course, as we had an actual building, it had identity, more people were aware of the community. And when they moved out here, they had more children were enrolled. And a lot of people, I think, who moved out here were asking, what is there for a Jewish child out here? And then when they heard that we had a synagogue, community center, it grew from there. And we had the classroom, we had Sunday school, we had bar mitzvah lessons, we had a community kitchen, and we brought in people to teach them how to cook and lessons. We also had a bring in challahs once a month. My husband went at 5, 6 in the morning to Garden City Bakery and brought the 150 challahs fresh out of the oven to here, and we took orders ahead of time, and people bought the challahs. They were all gone by the end of the 2 hours. So that became very popular. And then we also started seniors' lunches once a month. And we ended up with 95 people for the seniors' lunch. And it was great. One of the other members, Betty, her and I cooked the meals, and we had prizes, door prizes, and we had entertainment. And they were very well received. And the numbers kept building. So that went very well all the time. I remember one day, we didn't have time to make the homemade soup. We always like to serve soup. And so what I did is I went out to Safeway and I bought all these packages, containers of, it was I think butternut squash soup. And we opened them up, it was about 10 or 12 boxes of it in a pot on the stove. And we served that. And everybody thought it was the best soup they ever tasted. They wanted seconds. So I said to the girls in the kitchen, get rid of the boxes, don't leave them sitting there. So that was funny because it was the best. And I said we didn't spend any time doing it other than buying it. And they loved it. You know, they don't have a chance to have a good hot meal. And so it was fun. Things like that were happening all the time.
Burquest has impacted me on a personal level very much. My two daughters had their bat mitzvahs here. I saw them grow up, surrounded by other Jewish children, experiencing a Jewish education and a lovely life, surrounded by caring community. So I grew up in a family of Holocaust survivors from Eastern Poland. I remember very early on in my life, my uncle said, "If you do not carry on a Jewish life and education, the thread of our traditions will be lost." Burquest appealed to me from the very beginning as a house of community and worship for all the community. In fact, Burquest was conceived as that, first developed as lay-led services with visiting clergy, school for all the young to learn their Hebrew lessons in. We then developed a very fine Hebrew school and soon after purchased a building to house the community in. Since that time, we have offered classes, lectures, seniors and youth programs, and of course, services with our cantor. As we all know, change is inevitable. Burquest has remained a rock of Jewish tradition to which each generation can anchor. Even during COVID, we have provided services and programs virtually and in person. We continue to be involved in Jewish spirit, and we provide a home for Jewish people.
Being a seniors outreach counselor for many years, I understood that aging is not only biological but also social fact, and that is why it's so important to deal with loneliness and isolation of elderly people. And it was one of the reasons when I became member of the Burquest and decided to organize some programs and events for seniors in collaboration with Jewish Family Services and with financial support of Jewish Federation of Great Vancouver. These programs were such as singing group, Hebrew-English conversation, culinary art class, community kitchen lunches, and also events for main Jewish holidays as Passover, Rosh Hashanah, Hanukkah, and also boat trips, summer picnics, and much more.
Последняя молва, не верится никак, будто у меня есть в этот день дела, как будто я сама решиться не смогла, теряю я тебя, как души.
So we had our later former president, David Jacobs, who had cancer and then passed away. But when he was alive, we organized help to him and cleaning his place. And also after his death, I organized the fundraising for him for his memorial stone. And it was very touching because he didn't have any relatives in this world. Because Burquest became my Jewish home, where I met people with different backgrounds, with different views, political and social. We can disagree, argue with each other, but still we can unite with each other, and we can feel this place as our Jewish home and be together. And this is why I am still here, and I am involved in all activities of this community.
The Jewish community here is so much more diverse than it's ever been before, and our offerings are really beginning to match the diverse needs and interests of this community and the changes that it's experiencing. So we've seen a huge influx of Israeli families, particularly those with younger children. So we've really had to take a moment to think about what are their needs, how do they connect to their Jewish identity, and make sure that we had something on offer that allowed them to be welcomed here, allowed them to meet new friends and old friends, and really be a place of connection and community.
We welcome new members from all backgrounds and wish everybody shalom.
Shabbat shalom.